Picture this, right? You are walking through a dense, really quiet forest of blue pine up in the Himalayas.
Just completely isolated.
Exactly. And the air is just frigid. It's snapping at your cheeks. You're leading your horses through the trees, navigating this treacherous mountain pass.
Mm-hmm.
But you have absolutely no idea that, just a few feet away from you, hidden in the brush, is a figure trapped in an eternal living nightmare.
Such a chilling image.
It really is.
Yeah.
She is entirely bogged down, syndicated under this massive, freezing straitjacket made out of human skin.
Wow.
And you just walk right past her. You can't see her. You can't hear her piteous whimpers. And she is perpetually pinned to that exact spot, basically starving to death as the centuries just roll by.
It is an incredibly visceral, unsettling image to open with. I mean, it strips away any comfort or distance you might expect to have when you're stepping into a piece of historical biography.
Right, you just drop right into it.
Yeah, you were dropped immediately into this scene of absolute suffocating despair.
Well, welcome to the deep dive. Today, we are immersing ourselves in a story that is going to fundamentally challenge what you might expect from a religious text or a historical account.
Yeah, we're looking at a chapter titled The Demoness Who Wears a Skin Dress.
And we should probably clarify right at the start what kind of source material we're actually dealing with today. Because, it sounds like fantasy.
Right. It's important to note this is not a piece of dark fantasy fiction. We're looking at a creative nonfiction retelling. It was penned by the Bhutanese author Drukpa Kunley and published by HarperCollins.
The book is called Drukpa Kunley, Sacred Tales of a Mad Monk, right?
Yes, exactly. And Zangpo is drawing directly from historical biographical accounts and these really deep-rooted oral histories that have been passed down through Tibet and Bhutan for, well, centuries.
So our goal for you today is to analyze the unique narrative structure of this account. And specifically, we want to dig into the incredibly rich, deliberately grotesque descriptions the author uses.
Which are just fascinating.
They really are. We want to understand how a culture preserves the memory of one of its most famous historical figures, the so-called Mad Monk, and why they chose to remember him through such shocking, unconventional imagery.
Because the descriptive choices in oral histories, they're never accidental. They serve distinct functional purposes.
Right.
Every sensory detail, every structural pivot we are about to discuss, it's a deliberate mechanism used to communicate the legacy of Drukpa Kunley and the harsh realities of the Himalayan landscape he navigated.
And the structure of this chapter is a perfect example of that. The author starts the story right in the middle of the aftermath.
What literary critics would call in media res.
Exactly. We don't get a slow build-up or some grand introduction to a big battle. We start with this demoness already completely defeated.
Yeah, she's already suffering this horrifying punishment in the wilderness between Woodtrike and Paro.
So to give you some geographic grounding, Paro is a major, historically significant valley town in Bhutan.
And Woodtrike is this rocky waypoint along the ancient travel routes. I mean, these were real paths taken by real merchants and pilgrims.
Right. So by placing this eternal punishment right on a known, recognizable trade route, the story anchors the supernatural firmly in the everyday reality of the listener.
It makes it feel so much closer to home. And the description of her torment on that route is incredibly rich and sensory. Drukpa Kunley walks us through the seasons of her suffering.
Oh, yeah. The seasonal changes are brutal.
They really are. In the summer, this skin dress she is forced to wear gets completely soaked in the monsoon rains. It turns into this enormous, wet, impossibly heavy mass of hide.
You can just imagine the suffocating weight of it pressing her into the mud.
Exactly. She is wriggling, squirming, twisting under this sodden garment all summer long, starving and completely helpless.
And then the text forces us to feel the transition to the icy winter, where the sensory experience shifts entirely.
Yeah, the wet dress just freezes solid.
It's like a literal straitjacket of ice and leather. That frozen mass clings to her so tightly that she is rendered completely immobile.
Day and night, summer and winter, pinned to that exact spot.
The physical torture is brutal, but the text focuses heavily on her psychological torment, which, almost seems worse.
Oh, absolutely.
It notes that every single day she watches this stream of travelers walk past her with their yaks and their horses, but they are entirely oblivious to her.
Nobody sees her. Nobody hears her whimpering.
Right, she has completely lost her sense of her old identity as the sovereign ruler of her domain, the hills of Shinkarab.
That psychological degradation is really the core of her punishment. She's been reduced from an apex predator, a sovereign ruler who instilled terror across the entire region, to just a forgotten, invisible ghost.
A spectator to the very world she used to dominate.
Exactly.
Okay, let's unpack this a bit. Because it functions as a form of poetic justice, she is carrying the literal physical weight of her own malicious desires.
That's a great way to look at it.
She's suffocated and immobilized by the very thing she used to crave and wear as a trophy, human skin. The punishment fits the crime with a terrifying precision.
It really does. And structurally, starting with this eternal, pathetic state, it builds immediate narrative tension.
Oh, for sure.
You're confronted with this broken creature, and the author dangles just one clue about how she got there. The text notes that the only thing left in her mind is the haunting image of a rugged man armed with a bow and arrows.
Which just leaves you asking, who is this man, and what monstrous acts must she have committed to warrant such an inescapable fate?
That memory of the rugged man is the pivot point. It drags us right out of her present suffering and throws us back in time.
Right into the flashback.
Yeah, the narrative shifts to a flashback in the hills of Shinkarab to show us the demoness in her prime, answering the question of what she actually did to deserve this.
And the transition from the mystery of her punishment to the revelation of her past is so seamless. But what really stands out is how mundane the beginning of that flashback is.
It is almost jarringly normal. It's just a typical morning at Shinkarab.
The sun is only a few meters above the eastern horizon. And what is this terrifying, legendary demoness doing?
She overslept.
Right. I mean, she overslept. It grounds the supernatural in this relatable reality.
Yeah, she wakes up with a gnawing hunger, and she is frustrated with herself.
She is stressed because travelers heading to Pero, the ones who usually halt for the night in the cave of Woodedrick, they often slip past her territory unheard if she doesn't catch them early enough.
So she's essentially kicking herself for sleeping through her alarm and letting a potential meal get past her.
Exactly. So she decides she is going to be hypervigilant today.
This mundane opening serves as a really sharp contrast to what follows, because the moment she emerges from her dwelling, the author unleashes the full, terrifying reality of her existence.
Yeah, when she steps into the light, she is in her natural form, and the text holds absolutely nothing back in its description.
Nidrup Zangpo paints a picture that is difficult to shake. He describes a snarling maw and bulging bloodshot eyes that occupy a massive portion of her face.
Just horrific.
And her long hair flows down the back of her head and her temples in these thick, tangled, matted tresses.
She walks clumsily, grunting with short, laborious breaths. You can practically hear the wet, heavy panting as she moves.
The anatomical focus is highly deliberate here. Her lips are parted by elongated, interlocking fangs that are described as red and wet.
Yeah.
And her digits end in long, thick nails that look exactly like the talons of an apex predator.
Here's where it gets really interesting, though. I have to push back on this from a storytelling perspective because the author spends a significant amount of time detailing this incredibly grotesque monster. But literally a moment later in the text, she spots a lone pilgrim from the region of Lolman gliding down the path, and she immediately transforms into a beautiful girl waiting by the wayside to trick him. So, if her strategy is shape-shifting and deception, why spend so much narrative energy showing us the horrific monster form? Doesn't that just deflate the suspense of the encounter?
What's fascinating here is that the answer lies in the mechanics of oral tradition. Before these stories were written down, they had to survive centuries of being spoken aloud.
Okay, so how do you keep them memorable?
Exactly. How do you ensure a society remembers a story across hundreds of years? You make the imagery so shocking, so extreme, that it physically lodges in the brain. The grotesque imagery acts as a mnemonic device.
Oh, I see. So painting that visceral picture ensures the listener never forgets what is actually lurking in the woods.
Precisely. And in terms of narrative tension, it actually heightens the suspense. Think of it like a thriller where the audience is shown the bomb under the table before the characters even sit down to eat.
Ah, right. The Hitchcock theory of suspense.
Yes. The suspense isn't about what she is. The listener already knows she's a monster. The suspense is entirely about how the traveler is going to survive the encounter.
Because if she is only ever presented as a beautiful girl, the stakes feel really low.
Exactly. But because we know about the wet fangs and the bloodshot eyes, the threat is omnipresent.
It's the anglerfish mechanism. The beautiful girl sitting by the wayside is just the glowing, attractive lure dangling in the dark.
That's a perfect analogy.
But because of that early description, we, the audience, can see the massive, terrifying teeth waiting just behind the light. We know exactly what is going to happen when the trap snaps shut.
And that brings us to the actual encounter. The demoness has spotted her prey. But the way this prey is described completely shatters traditional expectations of what a holy figure should look like.
She spots this sure-footed pilgrim from Lomon, which, by the way, is a historical term for the region of Bhutan, and she assumes he is an easy meal.
So she approaches him in her disguise.
And the text gives us a highly detailed description of the traveler, who is Drukpa Kunley himself. He has arrived from Tibet, he is armed with a bow and arrows, and he's followed by a sturdy hunting dog.
And pay close attention to his attire. He is scantily clad. He wears rough leather sandals strapped to his ankles.
Yeah, his face is heavily weather-beaten, and his hair is utterly disheveled.
He does not look like a saint.
Not at all. If you imagine a sacred Buddhist monk, you usually picture pristine robes, a shaved head, and this aura of quiet, solemn piety.
Right.
Drukpa Kunley looks like a rugged vagabond or, I don't know, a wild man who has been living off the grid in the woods for decades. It's like a reverse masquerade ball.
How do you mean?
Well, the flesh-eating monster is wearing this pristine, beautiful mask, while the supposedly sacred, powerful monk looks like a rough vagabond.
If we connect this to the bigger picture, this visual contrast is absolutely central to understanding the biographical account of Drukpa Kunley.
Okay, tell me more about that.
To a Western or secular audience, this might seem contradictory, but it introduces a core concept in this spiritual tradition, often referred to as crazy wisdom.
Crazy wisdom.
Yes. It is the idea that true enlightenment doesn't always look polite or conventional.
Oh, interesting.
In fact, a practitioner of crazy wisdom often acts in wild, shocking, or socially unacceptable ways to shatter conventional thinking and ego. His holiness is not reflected in clean robes. It's reflected in his unfiltered connection to raw reality.
And the text actually explicitly points this out. It says that despite his rough exterior and his disheveled hair, he looks enchantingly happy and self-assured.
Yes, that phrase is key.
He just stands there, resting his arms akimbo. He isn't arrogant, but he is completely at peace. He is entirely unbothered by the sheer drop of the mountain pass or the stranger approaching him.
That internal state of enchanting happiness is the true marker of his enlightenment. The story sets up a profound thematic contrast here.
Yeah, it's night and day.
You have the demoness whose fake, flawless external beauty is masking internal rot and monstrous violence.
And standing opposite her is the mad monk, whose rough, weather-beaten external appearance is masking profound internal peace and spiritual power.
The tension between their appearances really boils over into their dialogue, leading directly into what is arguably one of the most bizarre, jarring climaxes you will ever read in a piece of religious or biographical history.
I mean, the dialogue starts out stark and direct. The disguised girl asks him where he is from, and he calmly replies, Tibet.
He doesn't run, he doesn't flinch, he just answers.
Then he turns the questioning on her. He asks where she lives and where she's going.
And she tells him she lives in the mountains and is simply searching for food.
But then Drukpa Kunley asks the pivotal question, what do you eat and what do you wear?
This is the moment the illusion breaks. The girl becomes entirely unsmiling.
The mask finally slips.
Exactly. The facade of the innocent maiden drops completely in her demeanor, even as she maintains the physical disguise. She confesses her true nature point blank.
She says, I eat human flesh and wear human skin whenever I get one.
It is a terrifying moment.
Yeah.
She is standing inches away from him on an isolated mountain path, basically telling him to his face that she's going to butcher him, eat his flesh, and wear his skin.
And this is the moment Drukpa Kunley performs his miracle to defeat her. So what does this all mean? If you are listening to this on your commute or making coffee right now, brace yourself, because you are about to hear this correctly.
It really is quite a twist.
Drukpa Kunley looks at this demoness who has just threatened to flay him alive, and he simply replies, well then, wear this. And then, miraculously, he skins his own scrotums and covers the girl with it.
That is precisely what the text describes. He uses his own flesh from the most vulnerable and anatomically raw part of his body to smother her.
I have to be honest, the first time I read that, my jaw dropped. Using that specific body part to defeat a terrifying supernatural threat feels absurd.
It's definitely not what you expect.
It feels almost comical and, frankly, deeply shocking. For a tale about a holy figure, it comes entirely out of left field.
Your reaction is exactly what the oral tradition intends. It is meant to shock the listener out of their complacency.
Well, it worked on me.
When we analyze why this specific bizarre climax is used, we see that it encapsulates the very essence of the Mad Monk.
Because it completely rejects how a holy battle is supposed to happen.
Exactly. Think about how a saint usually defeats a demon in classical mythology or traditional religious texts. They use a pure prayer, they hold up a holy relic, or they strike with a righteous sword of light.
Right, the victory's clean, it's elevated, and it reinforces a sense of solemn, divine order.
It's usually very sanitized.
But Drukpa Kunley operates entirely outside of that sanitized order. He defeats evil through a grotesque, literal, and darkly humorous action.
He doesn't banish her with a prayer. He gives her exactly what she asked for. She demanded human skin, so he miraculously provides it.
By weaponizing the most unelevated, raw, biological humanity against her?
It's the ultimate subversion.
Yeah.
She thinks she is the predator demanding flesh,
Yeah.
and he essentially says, you want flesh. Here is the absolute rawest, most undignified flesh imaginable. Choke on it.
And it strips away her power entirely. It destroys her ego. It brings the narrative full circle, resolving the mystery we opened with.
Yes, the demoness is left pleading and whimpering, trapped under that suffocating blanket of human skin.
While Drukpa Kunley simply turns around and resumes his journey toward Paro, completely unfazed by the encounter.
The narrative structure of this entire account is just masterfully executed. We started this deep dive looking at the eternal punishment, that freezing, heavy straitjacket of hide.
We had to understand the physical and psychological weight of her torment first. Then we jumped into the flashback, where we saw the grotesque monster behind the illusion.
We explored the incredible contrast between the anglerfish trap of the demon and the rugged, enchantingly happy demeanor of the monk.
And finally, we arrived at a climax that refuses to play by the rules of conventional religious storytelling.
Nidrup Zangpo's retelling preserves the vivid, sensory extremes and the shocking subversions that kept this story alive in the Himalayan oral tradition for generations.
It's a story that just refuses to be forgotten. Once you hear it, those images are permanently seared into your brain. The wet fangs, the invisible ghost watching travelers pass, the weather-beaten monk with his hunting dog, and that bizarre, literal skin dress.
It gives you a completely different perspective on how spiritual history can be recorded.
It really does.
Which leaves us with a final thought to consider as we wrap up our exploration of this text. We are so used to sanitizing our histories and our heroes. But what happens to a culture's history when its most sacred figures are remembered not for their polite, pristine virtues, but for their wild, rule-breaking, and even grotesque triumphs?
That's a great point. Does making a saint mad, giving them rough edges, a dark sense of humor, and an unpredictable nature actually make their teachings more human,
Yeah.
and therefore more enduring for the people who need to hear them?
It's something to mull over the next time you find yourself walking through a quiet forest or driving down an empty road, wondering what invisible, wild histories might be frozen just out of sight.
A compelling question to leave you with. Thanks for joining us on this deep dive.